As traditional financing systems face growing scrutiny and also digital assets continue to reshape the landscape, decentralized finance and also DeFi is emerging as a powerful alternative, promising transparency, accessibility and also innovation. As crypto adoption grows and also institutional players begin to take DeFi seriously, Malaysia finds itself in the crossroads. Will we lead in innovation or lag behind in regulation? And what does this mean for consumers, investors, as well as the broader financial systems? Joining me today is someone at the forefront of this evolution, Aaron Tang, General Manager for APAC at Luno Malaysia. Aaron, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us at this time. Aaron, first of all, can you break down and walk us through what decentralized finance or DeFi is about and how it differs from traditional and also centralized finance, and why basically it's gaining traction globally?
Morning, Najib. Thank you for having me. So when we talk about decentralized finance, the easiest way to think about decentralized finance, think of it as financial services that run on the internet using blockchain like Ethereum and Solana, right? So it's a technology that allows people to do financial services such as borrow, get some yield, lend, trade, and so on. The difference is it doesn't require the use of a middle person. So for example, a middle person or middleman could be a financial institution, for example, a bank, a broker, and so on. The very, very interesting thing about decentralized finance is using self-executing code that is found on the internet that handles everything automatically. So that's what decentralized finance is. I just want to contrast that to what centralized or maybe more traditional finance is. So typically you would think of something that is run by a central authority. The easiest example would be a bank, a government office, or even some other kind of financial institution. So the traditional way of running things is we are limited by geography. So you can only go to, say, an institution that's in your city or in your country. We are limited by office hours. We are limited by these kind of very, very human physical constraints. So whereas in decentralized finance, it's powered by self-executing code, meaning that it happens 24/7. It lives on the internet. I just want to put a final point on decentralized finance. Why is it gaining traction globally? Because number one, accessibility. So anyone with internet and a phone can join, even if they don't have a bank account. The speed is tremendous. You can do transactions within a second. You can do a very, very complex transaction. You can do access to lots and lots of global related projects or products. And then I think the very, very interesting thing is also there's a lot of transparency on the blockchain because things are written in code, and this code, usually it is auditable. Usually people can look at the code, meaning it is hard to hide like anything that is nefarious or not proper or against the law.
And also, Aaron, help us to understand what are some of the key inefficiencies in traditional finance or that DeFi aims to solve, and do you see that DeFi as a sort of threat or complement to existing financial systems, especially in the Southeast Asia?
Yeah, definitely. I think the inefficiency that everyone, human nature, we always try to look for something that is faster and cheaper. So undeniably, over years, our institutions, we have built in a lot of fees, a lot of transaction costs, processing times and so on. So this isn't to say that people are purposely taking advantage or whatever, but the systems that were built in maybe 50, 30, even 20 years ago, the systems are such that they require a lot of human intervention and so on. So the really cool thing about decentralized finance is you can have much faster transactions. You reduce the need for a lot of people to be involved. So that will allow you to be faster and cheaper and so on. Now, another challenge that traditionally we've had is basically limited access. So some of the physical constraints that we've spoken about, if you're from a certain country, you may be limited to financial services or products within that certain country. Another challenge that is also very apparent is office hours and such. So I think a lot of us are chronically online today. You know, we want 24/7 things happening in the middle of the night. We also want to look at our financial services. So those are some of the challenges and the demands, and they lead to the innovation in the decentralized finance world. Now, to your question as do we see it as a threat or a complement? I think a very rational, realistic, practical view is that these kind of technologies are going to complement existing technologies. Yes, there will be some systems, there will be some parts of organizations that may have to be replaced by these new technologies. But I think, you know, we've seen repeatedly throughout history that when new technologies come, people will have to adapt, people have to work together with these new technologies, and that's where the real power lies.
And Aaron, speaking about a growing institutional, interest in crypto, why are traditional financial institutions, increasingly exploring DeFi, and what factors do you see driving this shift, and what does that mean for the future of finance?
Yeah, the interesting thing is, so institutions, even though they may be large organizations, sometimes they also behave like people, right? Sometimes they're also looking for efficiency. So number one is actually efficiency. If we use decentralized finance smart contracts, so smart contracts is basically a way of saying self-executing code, that could actually reduce costs. It could speed up transactions. It could also cut out the number of fees that need to be paid. So for example, if we have a very complex transaction that involves, say, two organizations from different countries, there may be a lot of people in the middle, which everyone is taking everyone's taking a transaction fee, right? Now that ultimately means that the transaction is complex, it is slow, and it ends up being more expensive. So number one, I think financial institutions are also looking for efficiency, because ultimately that means higher value that can bring to the organization, the institution involved, and also brings higher value to the customers involved. So I think that's the number one thing, efficiency. Number two is somewhat linked to that. When you have higher efficiency, that means you can get higher returns. So higher returns on your investments, higher returns on your projects, or perhaps lower fees on things that you need to pay. And ultimately, I think the third thing is very exciting, that institutions can have access to new markets and new clients. So for example, say a company from Malaysia, which was, say, limited to a number of institutions that they can work with for whatever, say, physical reasons. But perhaps by introducing decentralized financial technology, they can give their customers more access to products, say, based from other parts of the world. So again, institutions are really, really very excited because it can bring them new markets and also new clients.
But Aaron, do you foresee a future where DeFi and also traditional finance, converge into a hybrid models? And what innovations, do you foresee in the future in terms of, bank digital currencies, CBDCs? We've heard this before, but how do you foresee the future?
100%. I think it's happening. We're just at the start of it, but it's definitely happening. So let me give a couple of examples, sort of the hybrid decentralized finance plus also traditional financial institutions. So I think the key point is that decentralized finance is a technology. It brings speed, innovation, borderless access, right? But if you think about it, financial services is still ultimately is about trust. So companies like banks, traditional finance institutions, people have been around for 80, 100 years. These are companies that bring trust, they bring regulation, they bring scale. People want to work with them because they are a trusted name. So together, when you combine this kind of, people, parties, technologies, you can have very, very interesting things. So I want to give some real-world examples. So there are already real-world assets. When we talk about real-world assets, things like stocks, bonds, real estate, there are companies that are already making these kind of assets into tokens. Once they're tokens, that means they will be able to be traded in the decentralized finance world. They will be able to be traded in the digital asset world. So I'll give you an example for Luno Overseas. We haven't brought this to Malaysia yet, but Luno Overseas, we are already offering tokenized stocks, meaning they are representations of companies on the US stock market. We're offering them in one of our markets globally. Now, this is very interesting because previously, it was very hard for customers in that country to have access to, say, USA stocks and so on because of some of the constraints that we spoke about. Now, another example that I'll give you is a very, very esteemed and traditional organization. It's called Franklin Templeton. So they've been around for more than 70 years, right? They're very, very established financial institution. They tokenize one of their mutual funds. They tokenize one of their mutual funds, and then it lives on the public blockchain. So this is another example of how traditional companies who've been around for a long time, but they're actually using DeFi technology. Now, Najib, to your question around central bank digital currencies, obviously that's something very, very interesting as well. I think central banks around the world also recognize the power of the technology. So what they're basically doing is trying to figure out, okay, you know, we have this really, really new, cool, powerful technology. How can we use this to make our currencies better, you know, to transact faster, to make settlement easier, to increase trade between countries? I think that's very, very interesting. And we really look forward to some of these innovations done by Bank Negara and some of the other central banks.
All right.